Do you know what a curse is? Do you know how it twists the fabric of one's life, weaving together something terrible and ragged? People say that curses will change fate, will alter the reality of one's future. Others say that some are born to be cursed, that fate deems it right for them to suffer between one that is themselves and another that is a monster. In most cases, curses are malevolent spells cast on someone or something, typically bringing about misfortune in many shapes and forms. This misfortune can range from physical transformations, bad luck, houses riddled in ruins, and in some cases, death. We know that the werewolves are cursed. We know that the lumbering berserkers of Skellige are cursed. These two have something in common, which is that they take on a physical transformation from human to animal. Normally they would become cursed through encounters or out of their own will, similar to how the berserkers will knowingly and willingly become the monsters that they are. However, there are some beings that were born cursed. There is one particular creature known to us as a striga. This violent, terrible beast is one of the worst cases when it comes to those under a spell. They are tormented souls, filled with hatred towards all things living, devouring them without a second thought. Hunting only under the light of the full moon, they use their strength and speed to do terrible slaughter to any they might come across. They have powerful claws, vicious fangs, and a jaw strong enough to crack bones and rip muscle tissue apart. They do not remember, nor do they care for those they might have known. Once a beast, they act as a beast without any mercy. But how does one become such a terrible beast? The curse of a striga can only be given to a woman, through some means of a spell muttered beneath the breath or shouted out of the lungs. However, there are very few documented cases on strigas which explain all the various aspects of these creatures. The most well-known one is from the daughter of none other than Foltest, King of Temeria. In this particular case, the princess was cursed before birth, while still in her mother's womb. I feel it's important to explain why this happened and who cast the spell that caused the curse. At this point in history, King Foltest was on the throne of Temeria, ruling over his kingdom. However, through certain events, he began an incestuous relationship with his half-sister named Adaa, which obviously was a very taboo subject. Although, in all honesty, incest was a very common thing in the medieval era, and much earlier on than that, especially in places like ancient Egypt. But this relationship between half-brother and half-sister began to be criticized by two people in particular. Firstly, there was a baron by the name of Ostrit, who was in love with Adaa and blamed King Foltest for taking her, being incredibly jealous. The second person, who openly had a problem with this relationship, was their own mother. It is thought that between the baron and the mother, they cursed the King Foltest. So when Adaa became pregnant and during the birth, her and her baby both supposedly died. It is said that one of the midwives went insane and the other jumped out of the window after seeing the child, because this child was born as a striga, and everyone believed it to be dead. That child was named after her mother, but instead was given the title of Adaa the White, so as to distinguish them apart and because of the whiteness to her hair, which was changed inside of the game to red. Of course, this child did in fact not properly die during birth, and she and her mother were both laid to rest in a single tomb beneath the castle. For 7 years, Adaa grew inside the sarcophagus, only to emerge a creature of predatory instinct with the size and skill to match. As to how she survived, she went out hunting from a very young age, which continued on for another 7 years, Foltest even known for feeding his enemies to her, being well aware that she was his cursed child. Either way, eventually the Witcher Geralt came into the story, managing to free Foltest's daughter of her curse. He did so by not allowing the Striga to return to her coffin where she lived, waiting until the third crowing of the rooster, or in other words, keeping her away for the entirety of the night. He lifted the curse and the princess returned to her natural form of a child. However, it was not without side effects. After a person has been cursed as a Striga, there is the chance that they will not fully recover mentally, keeping part of the vicious and somewhat dull-witted nature of her previous Striga form. But in the case of Adaa the White, since she had been cursed before birth, she had to learn speech, the proper behaviour of not only a princess but as a human being as well. She had never been exposed to humanity and had to learn everything as if it was another world to her. On top of all of that, there was also the chance of a relapse, the possibility that she would turn back into a Striga. To prevent this from happening, the cured Strigas wear amulets and participate in rituals designed to ward off the curse. Geralt even gave Adaa one such amulet. And of course there is the entire part where she becomes cursed again inside of The Witcher 1 and Geralt once again lifts the same curse from her, but that's something I won't go into too much detail because I would just be repeating the story from The Witcher 1. The Striga in other folklore is classified more as a type of vampire, said to be a child born with 2 souls, 2 hearts, and 2 rows of teeth. This happened to children cursed before birth or who were transformed by the devil. If that cursed child was born with teeth, which I assume must have been sharp, it was immediately called a Striga and dealt with one way or another. This is all pretty dark in many respects. However, if the child was stillborn and if not buried face down, it would eventually become a Striga too via its second heart and soul that would still be functioning. Soon after developing enough motor skills and the ability to simply walk around, this young Striga would start hunting for human blood, or animal blood if no humans could be found, but preferably they prefer the blood of humans. When a person believed to be a Striga died, decapitating the corpse and burying the head separate from the rest of the body was believed to prevent the Striga from rising from the dead. And as I mentioned earlier, burying the body face down with a sickle around its head was believed to work as well. There are some other methods of protection from the Striga, some being very similar to those of vampires, and some of these are actually pretty funny. So you can burn the body, hammering nails, stake, etc. into various parts of the Striga's body, slapping it across the face with one's left hand, burying it again outside of the village and pinning it down with a large rock, scattering poppy seeds in the shape of a cross in every corner of the house, burning it with the presence of a priest and burying the body again after additional rituals such as putting a piece of paper with the word Jesus written on it on the Striga's tongue. And the last one is putting small objects in the Striga's grave to make it count them. And I have no idea how any of that relates to the monster, but we'll just go with it. We'll just say it's fine. This is how it works. Although I don't think any of that can be applied in the witcherverse, either way, a Striga is a very dangerous being that should be treated as such. But again, just because it appears evil does not mean it technically deserves to be killed. That's one of the biggest grey areas with cursed monsters. More often than not, the person cursed is just innocent of any crimes, being only some poor soul who did no wrong. And especially in the case of Adaa, and indeed any child who gets cursed as a Striga, it's very difficult to know what to do when you have a monster who doesn't realise what it's doing because it's a monster not of its own accord, but because of what somebody did to it. So it's a confusing mess of a big grey area, so yeah, nothing really new there for The Witcher. As always everyone, thank you so much for watching, and if you'd like to help appeal to the algorithm gods, then please share this video around and leave a like and stay subscribed for more. And if you want to help to support me a little bit more personally, then you can check out my Patreon down below, and a massive thank you to everyone who is currently helping me there as well. Until the next one, you're going to have a very, very, very wonderful day. Hellgate London.